Okay, so water tanks, storage. We're going to take a look at some different possible materials here. This is not an exhaustive list, but some of the more common materials available in New Zealand especially. And very prevalent is the plastic tank, HDPE, or high density polyethylene. Now, if from nothing else, from your recycling bins, you're all aware of different types of plastic. And the high density polyethylene seems to be the most stable, the most inert in terms of leaching substances, plastotoxins, and such things. And it's quite stable. It's molded in one process, and that means that there isn't any interplay in terms of destabilization between different compounds within. It's a one single mass. It's also quite cost effective for the moment anyway, and they're easy to transport and put in place. This is a tank you'll actually get a first-hand experience of this afternoon, and David and I moved it before the last workshop to its current position and emptied out. Two of us could quite happily just lift it and shift it, which is something you can't say for most of the other sort of tanks. What you do have to watch out for is that it's very well bedded, and we'll cover that a little bit later. Also, you have to consider what can happen if the tank is empty, and there are some risks in terms of wind shifting the tank and damaging it. Or also, if, for example, it was to be inundated by a flash flood, it actually could lift up the tank before the tank had the chance to fill up and be washed away, or at least moved from its footings and damaged. Also, in terms of the strength when it's empty is severely impaired compared to the radial force when it's full. Steel tanks have been used in New Zealand. There's quite a history of them, especially before the advent of modern plastics. Tend to be a bit more expensive and tend to be used, I think, in larger applications especially. You can build a very solid, large structure out of steel, much beyond where you could go with plastic. Often galvanized. There can be issues with zinc leaching out of the zinc cover. With in terms of the plastic, you can sometimes get a little bit of taint from the plastic, especially if it's heating. If it's getting a lot of sun, it's not so ideal. Then, we've got our favourite, concrete. Now, I was looking at this when I was reworking the presentation last night, and I'm wondering, is that actually a pair of feet or gumboots at the top there? I can't quite make it out. Concrete is relatively cheap, and in terms of the energy, we'll take a look at comparing concrete to plastic. David's done some research into that. It's strong, it can be transported, and it's probably one of the most stable forms in terms of, again, the water quality as well. A new tank can and will leach a little bit of limestone into the water out of the cement, and will actually affect your pH for a certain length of time. And an Earthsong, our newest concrete tank for the common house, has still bringing back in the monthly water quality tests, it's bringing back a pH of about it's somewhere it's an alkaline pH. I don't have a figure in mind actually, and I wouldn't like to make one up, but it's slightly alkaline, where the other ones tend to be a little bit more towards acidity. But I'm told that will stabilise as the tank ages.
Concrete tanks can be underground too, they can be buried, whereas the plastic and steel ones, you can put them partially in the ground up to about a quarter or something beyond that. And Warren, you should add in bits that you know too, if you've come across it, you've got a lot of technical knowledge there as well, so draw on to that.
And also
and anyone else, yeah, feel free, because what we find at the workshops is, just as long as Warren, there's some of you that have other bits of information that you've come across, which feel free to share, and we can all learn. So.
Feel free to contradict as well.
Yeah. It's good to have some other points of view, you know. It helps to make you think more.
Now, I've thrown in ferro cement as well. I'm not sure how much it's practiced in New Zealand. In certain parts of the world, that's the main way of making tanks. And essentially, the difference is ferro cement can be constructed on site, and it's quite a cheap way to make a tank. It's essentially a mesh, a steel mesh of rebar and chicken wire, and it's made with a plaster. It's plaster on the inside and out, and it can be as thick as 2 fingers to 4 fingers in terms of the walls. And what you can see from this one, you can actually shape it as well and get away from the concrete look and create something quite aesthetically pleasing as well. And if anyone's interested, I've got actually some quite detailed instructions on how they can be constructed, that I'm happy to share that file with you. One thing that David and I weren't sure about was the bylaws and restrictions in terms of building your own tank. And that's something I'll be investigating into.
I'm not sure. I imagine it would be something that would cover under the Building Act. Because I know that you need building consent for certain size tanks, etc.
Yeah, we cover one of those examples later.
I think at the moment there's no controls over your water. So when you go with a new building, you say that you're going to store water, and this is something that the Ministry of Health are wanting to regulate on. So no one ever checks to see how you're storing it, the quality, anything else. You can pump it out of a creek or a stream, and the idea of the new regulations is to bring standards in, just as you have for your for the wastewater, and apply them to drinking water, with a view to having some sort of a warrant of fitness of water. So some bureaucrat might dash around every 5 years and take the depleted uranium out of your tank that you've been using to kill the bugs and that sort of thing.
She'll smell it on his breath.
He's noted.
Very good. Another option is timber, quite expensive, more for a business or industrial application typically. But again, aesthetically it can provide something quite nice. Depending on, well, I was reading about an older timber tank that actually raised the acidity and leached sulfur. That was a redwood tank in the States, and
I think most of the timber tanks now have a plastic
they do.
liner inside.
That's right. I mentioned this book, that's Oasis Publications, and that's actually got a lot of good information about water storage